Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today I want to do a video similar to what I did on the pressing shapes loosely from City game by game to now look at the in-possession shapes from City across those games leading up to the November international break. Starting with Wolves, you saw Ryan Aït-Nouri dropping a fair amount into the back line, so you'd have a lot of the times a two, but quite often Aït-Nouri drop in and form that kind of back three. Doku, Bob on either side, stretching the width. Rico Lewis, who'd invert from midfield, be involved in the progression a little bit more centrally, and then once you get into the final third, he's then able to try and make those runs into the half space, as well as kind of pulling out wide into these sort of pockets to be an option to move the ball around on the outside. And this really was a match all about Tijjani Reijnders in his movement, whether that is to carry the ball as he dribbled his way through to provide an assist for one goal, but then also his running capacity, making those runs in the half spaces. So City have those two wingers either side to stretch the Wolves back line, open up the gaps in the half space, and then you're able to see Tijjani Reijnders link up quite well with Oscar Bob, play those sort of 1-2 passes in this game, as well as then obviously offers his running capacity when it comes to the goal they scored in the transition. But for the most part, it is Tijjani Reijnders, Bernardo on either side as those kind of 2/8s. Nico in front is at 6. Lewis looking to support on one side. Aït-Nouri dropping a little bit deeper and then playing those passes. A majority of the play came down the right-hand side of City rather than the left-hand side. Obviously, for Doku's role in this one, I don't think he had the best performance, although first game back didn't exactly look at the kind of same fitness level that he has done for most of the games this season. I think this was the only real game where you saw, okay, maybe he just needs a bit more minutes on his legs and then he'll be off, and that did prove to be true. But his role was still to stretch a bit, similar to Oscar Bob, and then the success of those wide players depends on the actions of the number 8s, Rico Lewis, etc., to be involved and offer that movement in the half space when we are playing this sort of setup, playing against a back five that you're trying to break down when they are sat deep. You move over to Spurs, and this a little bit more differently, deeper from Aït-Nouri, which then once Nathan Ake comes on, he's very much always that kind of like deeper left centre back. In possession, Nico in front. Tijjani Reijnders was more operating on the left hand side. Rico Lewis inverting and pushing into that kind of half space on the right hand side. Oscar Bob holding the width. Marmoush really drifting inside quite a lot on that left, which then meant Aït-Nouri had to kind of push up at times to try and hold width. But we saw quite often them trying to hit balls, move quickly through the middle third and hit those balls into Marmoush rather than using him to really kind of stretch the width on that side, compared to what we saw with Jeremy Doku against Wolves. And then Shirky looking to try and find these pockets either side, trying to find space between the line to receive the ball. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that one. We move over to the Brighton game. This is where you saw more of Marmoush Bob moving it inside to then have the wingers push up, provide the width and really get advanced. I think Minter did a really good job with Aït-Nouri on our left-hand side to get back. There was a few times where Aït-Nouri was in, but unless he was very quick with his next action, Minter was seconds behind, if not shorter than that, to come back, support and help to deal with that situation for Brighton. Marmoush and Bob obviously moving inside in the half spaces. You then have Reijnders, Rodri, Bernardo, etc. a little bit deeper, looking to play those passes between those lines to then find those players that can receive on the half turn and advance, and then also have the fullbacks pushing up to support on either side. So that was quite a bit different in that game. I think that really did benefit Marmoush and Bob. They looked quite good in that first half. Obviously, second half had its kind of issues with the pressing and so on. But in terms of that first half, I think worked really well for the two of them, and a little bit of a nod of what was eventually to come from the wingers in future games this season. You then move over to the United game. This is the first proper kind of look at Jeremy Doku really having a lot of freedom to move inside. I've got this example here, which is the lead up to the first goal, where you've got Foden kind of occupying Fernandes, Nico O'Reilly kind of moving inside and then providing the width depending on what's needed. Kusanov really quite deep, so he's in a position to deal with Ahmad, balls over the top, Doku, etc. on that kind of right hand side. Bernardo holding the width on the right wing. And then, yeah, Doku looking to try and find his spaces between the lines alongside Foden. And he was moving all the way across to this kind of right pocket over here, as well as he was over on that left-hand side. And that was the first proper look at Doku moving inside this season. Then move over to the Napoli game. More of Doku inside, although this was, I'd say, focused to the left-hand side more than what we saw against United, where he was kind of moved all the way across the final third. And yeah, you saw that kind of relationship continue to build from him and Nico O'Reilly holding the whip, Doku moving inside, swap between the two of them. Kusanov really quite reserved and deeper on that right side, Silva holding the width, Foden moving inside. And then, yeah, you got your Rodri, Guardiola, Diaz kind of relationship as a three at the back to kind of support that. And then Ryan is looking to move as well between the lines across the final third. And then once we get into, as this only goes for first 20, 25 minutes, and then you've got Napoli down to 10 men. It's kind of breaking those players down. So again, you just see more and more players getting pushed between the lines from City to try and find some sort of overload. But yeah, building on the United game, more Doku moving inside. Foden very, very centrally along the top of the box trying to find Erling Haaland. I think that was one of the most through balls he's completed in a single match. And he completed a hell of a lot of chances in that game. So that was great to see from Phil Foden. And yeah, Kusanov, that kind of reserved role as the right back. Similar to what we would see from Walker, where he's kind of trying to use his pace, sit a little bit deeper, more on the defensive end. And then O'Reilly's able to push up and be a bit more advanced. Move on to the Arsenal game. Very, very briefly, we got to see City in possession. Didn't really work out that well for City. Press, they really struggled to do that with the kind of movement of Rice to pull deeper, Bernardo Silva, Foden stretch between two players, Rodri not committing to follow players in the middle. So City often tried to apply pressure where they could, but for the most time was sitting off, dropping back. So then it became more of a game of City playing in transition. Brief kind of moments where we did see Kusanov try and push up and provide some width. Doku holding the width on the other side. Didn't really get to see. Doku and O'Reilly didn't really have an opportunity to kind of swap positions and move around on that left-hand side. Diaz, Vardiol, Rodri dropping deeper as well to try and get on the ball. And yeah, they really struggled in that game to get to a longer spell of possession. And then once they did get to have possession with Arsenal inside their own half, really struggled to kind of progress the ball in that game. So hopefully we should expect to see a big improvement in the next game against Arsenal, which comes up a lot later in this season. But we've seen plenty of improvement already from City in the recent games, as we'll get onto. You then move on to this is the Huddersfield match in the League Cup, I think the third round. You saw it was interesting to see Mikasa in this one. So he was that kind of like false nine sort of player, looking to be in and around the box. I think he surprised a lot of people with his size, his physicality, already at his age, and he was looking to try and make those runs into the box. Lewis making runs between that kind of half space on the right hand side. You've got Bob out wide. Noon's able to support if need be. Otherwise, he sat more in that kind of back three with Stones, with Ake, Nico in front, and then Nico Riley's really quite free to kind of come inside and then charge through into the half space, into the box on there. And then yeah, Foden was looking to be that kind of player between the lines. First half dropped quite a bit next to Nico, whereas the second half, Nico played a lot more quicker through the lines, and the players were holding the spaces a bit better rather than dropping to collect all the time, which I think made it a little bit harder to try and find a way through Huddersfield. You then move over to Burnley match. A lot of this was built on that kind of relationship between Doku and O'Reilly really charging through the half space, running with the ball, or giving the ball to Doku and then pulling players into the box. Doku had a really good game in this one. Similar to the Huddersfield one, Foden was moving between the lines, and then he was dropping next to Nico to offer options to progress the ball. Matheus Nunes, more of a deeper role alongside Vardy, Diaz in that kind of back three, and then picking his moments when to make those runs in the box. Had a good little relationship with Reinders, so that when Reinders would drop deep, Nunes could then drift into the box whilst the ball was on that left-hand side, so he can kind of ghost in as he does for his goal. Savinho on that right-hand side, and then yeah, Tijani Reinders, as I mentioned, kind of operating more on the right hand side in this game against the back five of Burnley. You then move on to the Monaco game. I think this is a good performance, although second half, like, they had their issues, and obviously the penalty really does swing the kind of perception of the game, just because it then changes the result right into a draw. But I think there was a lot of kind of good signs of what was to come, and then we saw those in the future games. I think we saw more of that kind of relationship between Nico O'Reilly and Jeremy Doku, perhaps not as much kind of interchange as we would like, and we saw more of Nico O'Reilly being the guy on the outside looking to cross the ball in, like he does for his assist for Erling Haaland. Foden and Reinders really quite free moving across that final third, and lots of good little moments from them, keeping that back three with Vardy, Diaz, Stones, which you kind of expect, kind of like Champions League away games, keep a back three to be able to deal with the players that Monaco had in transition. You think Akliouche, Balogun, and Ansu Fati. I think Akliouche in particular had a really good performance defensively in terms of getting back to track O'Reilly, to double up with Doku, and make that quite hard for Jeremy Doku to have a lot of success in that game. So credit to Monaco for that. And then Foden continued to kind of be that guy that's moving between the lines and then dropping to receive the ball. But I think between Foden and Reinders, really quite close to having a lot of good moments in that game that just didn't quite come off. Both had shots, I think, that went off the bar. And we did start to see a little bit more of, well, I think this was kind of in the second half, we get to see more of the kind of use of Vardy looking to play passes, obviously for assist for Haaland, but also for the wingers. I think when Savinho came on, he was looking to play through the kind of space between the wide centre back and the wing back of Monaco, and play Savinho in behind to the runs that he was making. But yeah, pretty kind of standard setup that we expect to see. You then move over to the Brentford game. Lots of Rodri kind of dropping into the back line where need be. Mateus Nunes looking to make those kind of runs on that right hand side, underlapping and overlapping runs with Oscar Bob holding the whip. Savinho hold the whip on the other side. O'Reilly primarily looking to kind of make those runs through the half space into the box. Foden looking to drift between the lines rather than drop a lot. And then continued kind of relationship between Reinders on that right hand side looking to drop as Nunes makes that run up, and then once he drops, then looking for those kind of passes in the kind of like half space between the wing back and the wide centre back of Brentford, looking to play in Bob with his runs in behind there. We saw a lot of that. Obviously, the goal for Erling Haaland is Vardy playing those passes there as Foden pulls one. I think he pulls one of the centre backs with him a little bit higher, and then that gap between Coyote that's trying to keep an eye on Savinho. And then you got Van der Ven as with Haaland, and you just got that acres of space that Vardy was able to play the ball into. Something we saw a little bit with Monaco, and we got to see more and more of as the season went on, kind of opening up those spaces between those players in the middle of the pitch. But yeah, that was it for Brentford. We move on to the Everton game. I think we saw more so. You think about the pass from Phil into Nico O'Reilly. It's that kind of relationship between Jeremy Doku and Nico O'Reilly for a start to combine, and Doku moves inside and confuses, because Ndiaye would drop quite often into that kind of back line to deal with Doku, so O'Brien could double up, and then also he could be free to deal with O'Reilly if he makes the runs. But what they did a good job at was swapping at the right moment, so that when they try and swap over Ndiaye and Brian as they move inside, Nico O'Reilly's the one free and behind, and then you have that space kind of open up for Phil Foden to play those passes. More and Mateus Nunes on that right hand side looking to try and make those underlapping runs. A little bit more reserved, I'd say, in this game than in previous ones. And then you've got Nathan Ake coming in, Diaz, Nico in front, and as I mentioned with O'Reilly, it was kind of more move inside, and then choose to kind of make his moments to push up on the flank or to make those kind of runs into the box. But again, very, very similar to what we saw in a lot of the previous games, as we saw against Everton, who wanted to sit off and be quite deep quite often. You then move over to Villarreal, who set up 4-4-2 out of possession. This is where we saw the return of the treble kind of system, Stones inverting into midfield, Vardy playing left back, so you got end up with Vardy, Diaz, Nunes as your back three. a lot more of a kind of positional game. You're looking to pull players out to open up space and find those players in 2v1s. Try and find a space between the centre backs. This is kind of like the main thing here. So Doku had to hold width. A similar game to Wolves, where he got, I think, criticism for not being as successful, but a lot of the play, similar to Wolves, was all going down the right hand side between Savinho, Rico Lewis over on that right side, Mateus Nunes as well. But he's in part doing his job, whoever was on that side, to stretch the back line of Villarreal. So you want to open up these spaces between the centre-back, between the full-back, and often they'd kind of move the ball really quite slowly around, trying to look to shift the players of Villarreal higher up the pitch towards them. So you think about Mateus Nunes, John Stones on the ball, just looking to move the ball around to pull the Villarreal players up closer to them, to then leave Savinho in a 1v1 in space, and then once you get the ball to him, Rico can then make his runs through the half space into the box, and if Savinho is able to get into the box, then you've got a lot of players arriving in that situation, trying to overload that back line. So you think about, you've got Savinho, Lewis making a run, Haaland, Bernardo Silva over that side, Doku on that side, which the fullback at the back post is going to be preoccupied with Doku. So if he keeps his distance, then that keeps him kind of pulled away from the box to defend Haaland. So you're able to find those kind of overloads. And yeah, Silva gets one, Haaland gets one in that game. But yeah, that was very much a return to what we saw during the 22-23 season, really only possible by Stones, and also a kind of system where you do have to really you have to have the right players to kind of have the patience to stretch the opposition and open up the space and then accelerate at the right moments. We move on to the Aston Villa game, end up losing his game. I think a big difference came, and when we don't see it. So at first you get more of the Stones role, Stones moving inside, that kind of like control, three centre backs, trying to handle Villa in transition. Stones moving inside, but then also in the second half you have O'Reilly come on with Jeremy Doku, and we switch back to what we would have seen in previous games. O'Reilly looking to move inside and then combine with Jeremy Doku, one of them on the inside, one of them on the outside. But early on it was that kind of Stones set up to be able to deal with the transition of Villa. And I think a lot of their problems really just stemmed from not being able to control the game with the press at first. I think they had a really good kind of like 10-15 minutes. Struggled to high press Villa, who were able to kind of circulate the ball around their 6-yard box and then find a pass out through the press. Quite soft in that regard. Obviously not ideal having Nico, Rodri and Nico O'Reilly unable to start due to injuries or knocks. So you're kind of a little bit forced into this situation. Kovacic obviously wasn't an option to properly start, as we've seen what's come together with his fitness, and then eventually going for another surgery. So you're just a little bit stuck in terms of your options there. So yeah, it is what it is. But we did see a big difference once we changed from this into Nico O'Reilly and Jeremy Doku coming on. And Villa, to their credit, Kamara was really good at dropping into the back line. Again, looking to jump onto Vardy, apply pressure where need be. Buendia would follow Phil Foden quite tightly as well, so then he couldn't make those kind of runs in the half space. So everything we talked about in the Villarreal match about trying to overload the back line at the right moments, trying to find players in 2v1s, or at least isolated for a 1v1. Villa did a great job of closing a lot of those opportunities off, which made it a tough game for City to try and win. Very, very tight game. Obviously, Villa only don't really create that much, and then only score the goal off the set piece as well. But yeah, that's that one. Move over to next one, Swansea, back five. Yeah, standard kind of breakthrough back five. Mikasa was playing as that as the kind of like left eight in out of possession, but in possession he's right alongside the back line, looking to try and make those runs into the box. Marmoush as well. You got Rico Lewis trying to make those runs on the right hand side through the half space, as we've seen for all the games that he's appeared for us. We have that back three: Aitanori, Nathan Ake, and Kusanov. And then yeah, you've got Nico looking to try and find those players between the lines, and obviously Shirky looking to be between the lines and drop out and find other players. But But really, these kind of like League Cup games are all about trying to overload that back line to break down the opposition. Because yeah, really tough job. If you go with, say, he doesn't play Mikasa, and you play somebody that wants to sit a lot more, like a Kovacic alongside Nico, then you're losing another player that's trying to overload the back line. So then you're not matching up. You think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against their back 5, but you take out somebody like Mikasa for Kovacic, then you've got 4v5, and it's just harder and harder to try and find yourself in good situations. And you think with Bob over on that right hand side, Rico Lewis, Marmouche, Cherki coming over as well. Yeah, that was the kind of route forward for them. As well as they did have a lot of success, I think, playing quickly in the build-up and also going back to the keeper, pulling Swansea out and then looking to play more vertical, which again had some success. Cherki able to kind of find those passes between the lines, but not really too much you can kind of take away from those games. You then go to Bournemouth. Very different. Doku and Cherki moving inside to be between the lines of 3 of them, whether it's in front of the midfield line as well as behind it. Haaland pinning the centre-backs. Nico Riley, Mateus Nunes moving outside. Silva looking to drop out over to that kind of like right centre-back, right-back area in that kind of rotation on that right-hand side. And then obviously on the left-hand side, it's quite simple with Riley pushing up, Doku inside, and then Vardy will just stretch out where need be. Nico will drop into the back line where need be. And then, yeah, you've got those 3 players in the middle. And then it just becomes a decision for Bournemouth, really. So in the first half, the fullbacks weren't following Doku and Cherki inside, which then meant you had that kind of midfield overload happening. So then Diakite or Senesi would look to jump to deal with that midfield overload, and then that meant there was space in behind to play those first time passes into Erling Haaland, which you see play out for the first couple of goals. And then in the second half, Iraola instructed his fullbacks to follow those players inside and be tighter, which then meant the space was on the outside for the fullbacks of City in Mateus Nunes and Nico O'Reilly that they were able to get into, and then that leads to that third goal. And yeah, very, very interesting setup. We won't see this kind of setup against an Everton and Burnley like we've got coming up with Leeds and West Ham and Fulham. They're not going to press us really high up the pitch like Bournemouth would, and as I'll get onto with Liverpool. So this is not something you're going to see against all teams. So it'll be interesting to see how the team kind of shapes up in that one. I'd expect more similar to what we talked about earlier in the video, with looking to play the players more, adding more players between the lines, stretch either side with the wingers, and then have the kind of relationship between Nico Riley, Doku, etc. Rather than having these kind of 3 players all move in between the lines as we saw against Bournemouth. Move on to Dortmund, second to last game before we get to the end of the video. Maybe it feels like a long one for you guys, it does for me. So this one we saw more of that kind of Phil Foden between the lines that we used to in previous seasons. Continue that kind of relationship with Nico Riley and Jeremy Doku. Savinho was holding a width on that right hand side, being that wide option. And then you've got Reinders looking to drift all the way across the final third. And yeah, Foden wants to try and find a pocket of space behind Spitzer, behind Lemaitre. Dortmund, 2 centre-backs, Anton and Schotterbeck, wanted to double up with Erling Haaland, which then meant you've got that wide centre-back of Dortmund that needs to cover Savinho. And then they had Svensson that was pressing Reinders, which I think caused City a little bit of problems early on. And then once they figured that out, they knew that they could pull him up, and then that would leave Phil Foden really quite free in space. And I think for the first goal, they really do wait until the midfield line of Dortmund with Sabitzer, with Lemaitre, really move up. Svensson jumps towards Reinders. Bessenbarni is tracking Savinho, and then Phil Foden's just in acres of space, able to turn, go to top of the box and take his shot. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And they've obviously got Adeyemi, Grassi, Bier looking to try and apply a lot of pressure on City, which again, I think that was something that they didn't expect at first. I think once they were aware of the pressure they were putting on the ball, they were able to get around that, Nico dropping, etc. And then that brings me to Liverpool. More Jeremy Doku, Phil Foden, Cherki moving inside, Silva looking to drop out into that kind of right back, right centre back spot, being an option against the press of Liverpool. Nico dropping between the two centre backs, and then Vardy or Diaz will split. And similar to the Bournemouth game, as I mentioned, with the second half, Slot had his fullbacks follow the players inside and be tight, so that meant the space was out wide for Nico Riley, for Mateus Nunes to attack and get in behind, and that's what we saw for a lot of the game. And then also I think Doku did a really good job of knowing when he could kind of find the pockets of space to move out, so that Bradley was finding himself in 2v1s all the time. Salah wasn't tracking back, and the way that kind of O'Reilly would position himself was to be between the two. That is a little bit of a question mark for Bradley. Do I press him? Do I not? And also be kind of in the blind spot of Salah behind him, out wide. Quickly Doku was able to be found through to O'Reilly, then into Jeremy Doku, and then he's 1v1 with Bradley with acres of space to attack. As well as Mateus Nunes on the other side had plenty of occasions where he was found over the top and able to drive forward, as we saw for the lead up with the first goal. And then you obviously have all of these plays between the lines, Doku, Foden, Silva, that are coming deep to outnumber the press of Liverpool and be an option to build up short. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just kind of like quick run through of all the games, just to remind yourself of how City have looked game by game. I think a lot of the kind of setup that we've seen recently with the three players between the lines is brand new. We saw those kind of ideas with Doku that started with United, Napoli, and began to kind of merge into the team. Then we've seen more of the kind of fullbacks out wide that have continued as we've gone on games. And then once we get to Bournemouth, Liverpool, Dortmund, etc., it's kind of like more of the kind of full form of that, particularly against teams that will go a little bit more man-to-man, that will be more aggressive, pressing high up the pitch, that we've been able to see this. Let's say we had a run of games that was like Leeds and West Ham and Fulham, I don't think we'd see these kind of setups and have that same kind of talk around the players in the way that they played. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you think I've missed anything out, have any questions on anything down below in the comments. Make sure you like the video to help support the channel, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video.